1853 by a Unitarian minister who was also a transcendentalist. So that might be why it really resonated with me. So Theodore Parker was his name, and this is what he had to say. So we're talking 170 odd years ago, right? So this is before the abolition of slavery and perhaps foreshadowing of that. So this is what our friend Theodore had to say. He said, "Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of what's right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one, and my eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience, but from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice." So that is, to me, it sums up that idea of faith. When we are looking out in the world and we're seeing a world that does not serve the good of all people, that is the moment of faith where we can't see it, but we know that arc must bend towards justice. And if we get more into the idea of that sort of spiritual realm, the idea that we live in an infinite universe, that there is an infinite power, if you think about it, an infinite power has to be benevolent. Because if an infinite power is destructive, it destructs it just destroys itself. So there must be a benevolence in the world, despite sometimes when it looks like the opposite is happening. So I must say that through my time of faith, of knowing, of planting that seed in intention every day, of doing my social justice work, of setting in mind the world that I wanted to see, even though when I looked outside of myself, I wasn't seeing a lot of evidence, that was a time of efforting. It was a hard time, if I'm honest. I didn't wake up bubbling over with joy. I woke up and I said, well, if I'm on this side of the ground, that's my work to do today. I have the faith, I plant the seed, and I keep moving forward. And now I get to reap some of the momentum, of the energy I'm feeling in the world, this rise of hope that I'm feeling in the world. And I think it's a really good part of the whole point of me talking about this is that I think it's good to recognize I had my season of faith where I had to really be kind and careful with myself and really be gentle with myself as I kept that faith. Now I'm feeling an excitement. I'm feeling hope. And there's an energy and a momentum in the world. And I think that hope it's infectious, it's contagious, and it spreads to us all. And so for me, what I want to do, and this is what I'm inviting you all to do as well, is to mark that change, to notice the lightness, to feel the momentum in the world. Because often in our teaching, we have we talk about like not looking out into the world, but knowing that our source is within. And that's all good, but I think it's okay to look outside as well when we start to see the world mirroring back to us what we want to experience. So my tradition is the science of mind, and it's Ernest Holmes was the founder of this teaching and wrote a book, and it's very similar to Unity's principles. And we have this lovely model called the creative process. And we even have this very pretty circle, and it's got 3 levels to it, and it's got this V in it, and it represents this idea of first cause, of consciousness creating effect. It's a beautiful model. What it doesn't show, though, is that sometimes when the seed is planted, our idea, or the world and its arc towards justice, when that's planted, what it doesn't show is the pathway that can sometimes happen. Like all of the things that we put inside our mind, we want peace, all of the things that are unlike peace, that are not the truth of our being, can be brought to the surface for us to release and to to really process and let go of, and see them as the thing that perhaps we've been believing in but is not the truth. So that model is lovely, but this is, I think, the faith and the hope are the things that get us through the times where we can't see the end of the arc. Have you ever been river rafting? So river rafting, I think, is a good analogy for this. So when you're river rafting, you have different times in your raft. You have the time where you're just going along with the current. It's quite lovely. If you're paddling, it's easy. You're going with the current. You're being sort of buoyed along and carried along. It's quite a lovely thing. Then you can go through these pools. You know, the pools where the water is sort of swirling and still, and you don't really get anywhere. So it can be a time of rest. You can jump into a swimming hole and have a little swim. And then when you go through some rapids, the water is churning and swirling, and you feel like you're going to be smashed into the rocks. That's the time where you need to be really, really clear on where you're headed while you're paddling yourself away from the rocks. It can certainly feel like the water is just trying to slam you into the rocks. But if you were to be able to fly above that river, it is still ending in the same ocean. That river, that is just one section. I think that is the time of us not being able to see the change we want in the world, having to have faith. That's the time of the rapids. And I think, for myself anyway, I've moved from that time. I have been, paddle in, trying to stay away from the rocks while keeping myself pointed in the direction I want to go. And I feel like I've now come out of that section where I'm back in the current, that I'm being propelled along, that I'm being buoyed up and carried by the stream. So, now we were talking about the news and a lot of big things going on in the world, but I think it's true in our own lives too. Have you had those times, whether it's in a relationship or perhaps a health issue, or perhaps in your career, where it feels like you're paddling really hard and getting nowhere? And then other times where you feel like you're being carried along? So I think this is a really important thing to mark, is to be able to identify for ourselves, where am I right now? Am I in the still pool? Am I just taking a rest? Can I jump out and have a swim? Am I being carried along in the current? Can I go along with the momentum and maybe pick up speed and really create what I want to experience? Or am I in the rapids, where right now I need to be really focused on caring for myself, keeping myself away from the rocks, and keeping myself pointed in the ultimate direction I want to go? So which place am I in? And knowing, I think it's really important, especially in those rapids, to know it's not always going to be like this. Right now I can keep the faith, I can keep with it. It may be taking a lot of energy to keep myself pointed in the right direction, but to know that that stream is coming, the current is coming, I will be lifted up and carried along through this next section. So that's what I want to share to you today, is wherever you are in your journey, whether you're in that place of faith, I want to say it's not always going to be like this if it's feeling hard. If you're in the current, that we can all lift each other up, because that hope is infectious, and we can get on the momentum of what we see in the world, and we can move along perhaps even quicker than we thought we could. So I wanted to really honor each of those places and honor our own space in that, and really to spread that idea of hope, that hope is there and hope is alive and can be right around the corner. So thank you.